Well, thank you for joining us for another busy night of news on Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse. I am Brandon Hudson. We are nearly a year removed from the 2024 election, an election where multiple polls said the economy impacted votes the most. But why are we bringing this up now? Simple. Tonight's show, it's all about the money. We're going to dive into what's happened today with the government shutdown, but you should know right now it is entering its fourth week. Thousands of government workers are missing their first full paycheck. Also, key programs Americans rely on like WIC and Head Start, they're facing funding cutoffs, all as economists from Oxford Economics say that a shutdown reduces economic growth by as much as 0.2 percentage points each week. And that leads to lower profits for businesses, companies hesitating to invest, and the stock market becoming more turbulent. Tonight, we are talking with Oakland University political science professor Nicole Matthew. Will this be something that voters keep in mind in the midterms? Who could blink first? And which side faces the most pressure? And about face by the Trump administration when it comes to student loan forgiveness, where they have agreed to deliver more of it. Financial expert Dr. Darla Bishop with who could benefit. And Capitol Hill is where we start tonight, but it's not for the reason that you think. Look, I know I said we're all about the money, but let's take a detour through our headlines. You see, the state of Arizona is suing House Speaker Mike Johnson because he refuses to seat this woman, a Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalvo. Follow me on this one. She won a special election to replace her late father, Raul, last month. She hasn't been sworn in. House Speaker Mike Johnson said that she will be when the House returns to its regular sessions. But here's the thing. No one knows when that will be. Johnson's threatened to keep House lawmakers out of Washington until the shutdown is over. Arizona's Attorney General claims that Johnson is subjecting Arizonans to taxation without representation. Johnson called the threat of a suit as a bid for publicity earlier this week. Well, now, back to the shutdown, because talks between Democrats and Republicans really could be summed up by this clip that we will show you from a show you might have watched in the 2000s.
Deal or no deal?
Yeah, that is pretty much what Democrats have said since the clock struck midnight October 1st. But this isn't a game show. I'm not Howie Mandel. This is real life. Today, President Trump brought Senate Republicans to the White House Rose Garden with a very simple message. The GOP is united, and they're not backing down.
Today, I'm calling on every Senate Democrat to stop the madness, to let our country get back. In the greatest moment in the history of our country in terms of wealth, these guys go on strike. It's really a shame.
We are going to keep voting to open up the government, and eventually the Democrats, hopefully sooner or later, are going to come around.
But here's the thing. Democrats, they're not backing down either. They say the battle over those Affordable Care Act subsidies that expire at the end of the year are just too important. Republicans say they aren't going to negotiate until the government reopens, but the Dems say they're ready to come to the table.
There's nothing far left or far right or center about wanting lower premiums. It's common sense. It's what the American people overwhelmingly want.
They'd rather keep the government shut down than provide affordable health care and extend the tax credits for everyday Americans, for working class Americans, and for middle class Americans. Democrats will continue to make clear that we will sit down anytime, any place with anyone here at the Capitol or back at the White House in order to reopen the government.
Well, now to those furloughs we talked about. They're now hitting the agency tasked with overseeing our nuclear stockpile. So that's according to Energy Secretary Chris Wright. 1,400 workers will be off the job. Nearly 400 workers will stay on, along with thousands of contractors. Wright says the disruption will delay testing of commercial reactors, but don't pose an immediate threat to national security.
We've worked within the Trump administration, across the administration, in the DOE and OMB to find creative ways to keep funding, to keep our contractors employed, at least through the end of the month. This is critical for two reasons. Number one, this is thousands of families that are working hard, patriots, to support our country and build the systems that are critical to protect the sovereignty of our nation. Number two, it is our national security. These are jobs of great gravity. We need to maintain our nuclear stockpile, have our adversaries confident that we have our stuff together. We have a secure and ready to deploy at a moment's notice stockpile.
Well, this is the fourth week of the government shutdown. The last time we had one during President Trump's first term, that one lasted 35 days. Well, now to the war between Russia and Ukraine. President Trump's plan for a meeting between him and Russian President Vladimir Putin is on hold, and that's after a call between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russia's foreign minister. The Kremlin says that they need more time and says that its demands are the same, calling for peace for an extended amount of time. But European leaders say Russia is stalling and trying to make gains on the battlefield. They're urging President Trump to hold firm its demands for a ceasefire.
America has a lot of strength to pressure Russia to come to the negotiation table. If they use that, then of course this is good. If Russia stops this war,
I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time. So I'll see what happens. But we did all of these great deals, great peace deals. They're all peace deals. They're agreements, solid agreements, every one of them. But this one, and I said, go to the line of battle. On the battlefield lines, and you pull back and you go home, and everybody takes some time off because you got two countries that are killing each other. You got two countries that are losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week.
The war between Russia and Ukraine has raged on for 3.5 years after Russia invaded in February of 2022. Right now, Russia occupies about a fifth of Ukraine, but carving up the country in exchange for peace is unacceptable for Ukrainian officials. A U.S. appeals court says the Trump administration can take command of Oregon's National Guard. That's as the battle over troops being sent to Portland rages on. But here's the catch with that ruling. The president still can't actually deploy the troops, at least for now. President Trump has repeatedly said troops are needed to protect federal property from protesters, but leaders in the state say the National Guard is not needed.
The vibes are definitely feeling a lot of confusion and wondering if this is what they signed up for.
I've been very clear, especially when I met with Secretary of Homeland Security, Secretary Noem, that the use of the crowd control techniques from federal agents was over the top.
Now, there have been mostly small protests outside the ICE building in Portland every night since June. There have been larger crowds that have shown up occasionally, including counter-protesters and live streamers. Federal agents have used tear gas to disperse them. Well, this is just scratching the surface. So let's pick up the pace and run through some other big stories that we're keeping a close eye on. President Trump's pick to lead the Office of Special Counsel has withdrawn his nomination. Paul Ingrassia is under fire after Politico reports Ingrassia told people in a group chat that MLK Day should be, quote, ended and tossed into the seventh circle of hell. He also reportedly described himself as, quote, having a Nazi streak at times. Ingrassia's attorney said the messages could have either been manipulated or were missing some context, but did not confirm their authentic. Ingrassia's support has been eroding, with Senate Majority Leader John Thune saying the nomination wouldn't get through. Ingrassia pointed to a lack of Republican votes for why he's withdrawing. Well, part of the East Wing at the White House is coming down. You can see some of that here. Crews started tearing down part of it this week to make room for the president's $250 million bathroom. That's despite not having approval for construction, or ballroom, excuse me, not bathroom, ballroom. Well, that is despite not having approval for construction from the agency that oversees these projects, and the White House saying initially nothing would be demolished. The ballroom will be 90 square feet and be nearly double the size of the main White House. President Trump said it'll be paid for by private donations, not taxpayers. And from the current president to the former one, Joe Biden completed a round of radiation therapy for aggressive form of prostate cancer that he's battling. The former president was diagnosed earlier this year. His office said that the cancer spread to his bones. The 82-year-old had surgery to remove skin cancer lesions from his forehead last month. All right. Returning back to the government shutdown after the break, thousands of workers are missing a full paycheck this week. Battle lines were drawn. Neither side is backing down, and we are diving in it all with Oakland University political science professor Nicole Matthew after the break. You are watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. We're back now on the Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Here to talk about the latest involving the government shutdown and its impact it's having. Oakland University political science professor Nicole Matthew. Professor Matthew, it's a pleasure to have you on the Pulse. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. We want to talk about money here. And for the first time, the federal workers will be missing their paycheck. We know that this past election was really all about the money. People voted with their wallets. How does this shape any races coming up in a few weeks, and how we look at the midterm coming up next year?
Well, there are a few states that are voting on governor in a few weeks, Virginia being one of them, which just has a lot of federal workers in the state, and so it could have a big impact. It might not have as big of an impact as you'd think, because a lot of the federal workers tend to vote Democrat already, and I think they think that Democrats are the ones that have their back on this one, but it could drive turnout and excitement.
Is this something that Democrats could see as an opportunity to open up over the next 12 months? As we head into the midterm?
I think what Democrats really want to be talking about is health care. It's an issue that's always been good for them in elections. And even if they get blamed partially for the shutdown, they're thinking in the 2026 midterms, people aren't going to be thinking about the shutdown anymore. They're going to be thinking about health care, and they're going to be thinking about Democrats standing up for them. And so I think as much as they can get the focus on that issue, they're happy to keep the shutdown going.
Comparing this to the last shutdown, well, the longest shutdown went 35 days. We are roughly 2 weeks out from that target there. Does this seem different than that shutdown that happened that went so long a few years back?
This one's a little different because we have no appropriations bills passed at all. So no part of the government is having money. So that's one difference. And I think the other difference is there doesn't seem to be a lot of urgency on either side to get together and talk about it. I don't think that the leaders of each party have met together since the day before the shutdown started.
Do you have any indication, and we don't really hear a lot from voters really until we go to the polls here, but it seems like this is really just between Republicans and Democrats. Voters don't really seem as energetic. Is that because it's not really an election year, or is it just, you know, something that's kind of expected that we've seen with partisan politics lately?
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of polling, but in general, Republicans tend to get a little more blame during shutdowns. I think they're a little more okay with getting the blame because they aren't that excited about the government spending money anyway. And I think that it was a little surprising. There was some polling that came out kind of early in the shutdown that indicated that Republicans were getting more blame than Democrats. So we'll see if that actually causes Republicans to want to move on this.
What do you see? Who do you think blinks first here? Or is this going to end up with some kind of a kumbaya moment in the next matter of weeks?
Well, no one's going to get everything that they're asking for. And I think that Democrats are going to have to negotiate somewhat on these Obamacare subsidies, maybe with some income caps. Republicans look like they're coming to the political reality that it's going to be bad to not extend the subsidies at all. And so they're thinking about how are we going to get the most out of this? Can we get a deal to phase out the subsidies completely if we allow them to continue for a few more cycles, or perhaps allow people that already have the subsidy to keep it but not allow new people to get it? So there's already some internal discussions with each party about what they're willing to negotiate, but they haven't yet met with each other.
Look, you're a professor. You're teaching our future here. From what you maybe see in the conversations on campus or in the classroom, are a lot of younger voters, are they even concerned with what's happening in Washington with this shutdown here?
I mean, I think to younger voters, this doesn't seem like an unusual thing, the government getting shut down, because their whole life it's been getting shut down every couple years. When I was a young person and the government got shut down in the 1990s, that was a little unusual. But for them, it's just politics as usual.
What's the lesson here? When you go in the classroom and you have conversations with a lot of students, what are they eager to know about how this shutdown works or how government works in these kinds of situations?
Well, I think the main thing that we can take from it is that each side has different leverage that's given to it by the rules of how the institution works. So this is one of the first opportunities for Democrats to exert some leverage, because in order to pass an appropriations bill in the Senate, you need basically 60 votes to get to a final vote. And so this is the first opportunity for Democrats to really put a line in the sand and stand up for something. So I think that's the important lesson that I try to teach them, is it matters what people's preferences are, but also the rules of how we decide things also matter.
Look, I think at this point we're hoping for a Halloween miracle, or maybe a Thanksgiving miracle, a holiday miracle. Give us a sense of hope here. We have about 30 seconds left. How do you see this ending?
Well, I think Thanksgiving is going to be a real hard deadline, because I don't think that you want the FAA working without pay while everybody's trying to travel for Thanksgiving. So I would be really surprised if there's not big pressure to get something done by then. All
right, we will hope so. Of course, we'll bring you back when we get to that point. But Professor Matthew, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to stick with the topic about money after the break, but in a different way. Millions of Americans, they are drowning in student loan debt, but some are getting some good news. The Trump administration has agreed to deliver more loan forgiveness. Who could benefit? That's next. The Pulse is back in 3 minutes. Well, it is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show, The Pulse. Here to talk about the about-face by the Trump administration when it comes to student loan forgiveness is financial advisor Dr. Darla Bishop. Dr. Bishop, it's always good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Usually I see you around midday, so this is a little bit different for the both of us. But look, this is a big kind of moment for a lot of student borrowers. Explain, if you are borrowing money and you thought you weren't going to see this administration give you any kind of relief, what kind of a day is this for you?
Yeah, so essentially there were some rules in place under the previous Biden-Harris administration that cleared the pathway for folks who were certain public service workers and who had made certain types of payments based on income-based repayment plans. The Trump administration had halted those programs, but in this reverse are saying, actually, we will let those programs continue. And so that's going to bring relief to about 2.5 million borrowers. And that's a big deal. These are folks who were had done their work, had tracked appropriately, had been in touch with the federal government for the minimum years. And so they're excited to see that go through. And the great news is that any forgiveness that happens within the calendar year will not be counted as taxable income.
So if you were somebody who maybe you didn't quite do the work because you weren't quite sure if this was going to happen or not, is there a way for them to catch up?
Yes, so there are several ways to catch up. Essentially, you want to start with your loan processor and find out, are you ahead on your payments? How do you make sure that you can get back into good standing? And to make sure that you're doing the annual certification for your public service loan forgiveness. So those are things like our military, police officers, certain teachers and educators.
I think one of the things that comes to mind is when you talk about people getting some relief from their student loans, they're going to be able to have more money. And that way it helps the economy. But explain for a lot of people at home how this kind of move can really help the economy, especially at a time when we're seeing tariffs, having people a little shy when it comes to when it's spending their cash.
Well, it makes a big difference. If I'm currently making a student loan payment upwards of $500 a month, and that gets freed up for the next 5 years, right? That means that I've got at least $500 more a month for groceries, for entertainment, to spend with local businesses, whether they are national chains or locally owned. And that matters to our communities, especially right now. I don't know if you've been to a restaurant on a weeknight, but they've been pretty quiet. And so if we could free up these pocket space for 2.5 million Americans, that will make a difference to the small business economy hugely. And
it also helps, we're nearing the holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah. A lot of people are this is where you start to really budget. But when it comes to loan forgiveness here, for anyone who may be watching this and they want to know, what is the best way to kind of make the use of their money, the extra money that's going to come in? I know that we've talked about this before, but some advice you have for people on how to be wise with that extra amount of income.
Absolutely. So before you spend any of it, take inventory. Is there any other debt that you'd like to start putting that towards so that it frees up even more cash in your monthly budget? Are there any repairs that would make your car or your home last a little longer so that way you don't have to replace it? Because replacing a car and a house is very expensive these days. Are there any catch-up things that you haven't been able to do for your kids or for yourself that would make a positive difference? Because don't forget to budget the joy. If you've got a little wiggle room, put some joy in there because it'll make the rest of the season go easier.
So before you get ready to, make that big purchase or spend that vacation or girls trip, guys trip, just, take a minute, take some inventory, make sure you get some cash coming in. Is this something that you thought would happen under this administration, or is this something that you're kind of surprised?
No, but there was a ton of pressure from advocates on both sides of the aisle, nonpartisan, because these were rules that had already been in place but had been stalled. And so these are folks who were qualified for forgiveness programs, had done the work, and so to have it stopped was a huge reversal of a program that should have already been in place. And this is a long-standing, very popular program. This isn't something that the Biden-Harris administration put in. It's something that they just cleared the path and made it easier for borrowers to take advantage of.
So, look, this helps 2.5 million people, but we know there are still millions of other people who are, facing some kind of hardship because they want to get higher education. What happens with the rest of those people? Is this something that they can be hopeful for? Maybe they'll get some assistance in the future?
The important thing is to always stay on top of eligibility requirements for student loan forgiveness programs to stay in good standing. And there are lots of ways to stay in good standing, whether you're able to make those traditional payments or not. If you are a lower income borrower or a public service worker, go ahead and make sure that you're enrolled in one of the payment plans that shifts based on your income, because that can make a difference and help you stay in good standing longer.
Look, we got about a minute left here. How often does it come up in conversation when you talk to people that maybe you say stay on top of the things, but maybe they're like, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't know that? How often are you telling people, like, look, this is out there for you, you just have to be able to find it?
It depends on how important it is in their life. Like if you're parenting small kids and you're trying to get them through elementary school, your focus is elsewhere, right? But if you're a young adult and you're thinking about getting married or buying a house and those student loans really make a difference in whether you can do that, then you are paying more close attention. A lot of this is life stage shifting, right? And so the important thing is if it matters to you, then, Google every once in a while.
It's all about priorities. And Dr. Bishop, we appreciate you making us a priority tonight here in The Pulse. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that is The Pulse for tonight. Thank you for joining us. I am Brandon Hudson, and have a good night. Thank you.